Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to totally uncover the gritty, brilliant reality behind ancient Egypt's most famous achievements. We're stripping away the myths and getting right down to how this incredible civilization actually functioned on a day-to-day, brick-by-brick, and body-by-body level. Let's get right into it.
So, when you think of ancient Egypt, what immediately pops into your mind? For a lot of us, it's this civilization wrapped in an aura of esoteric wizardry, right? We imagine secret mathematical codes hidden in the pyramids and mystical, magical spells used to achieve eternal life. But I really want to challenge those preconceived notions today. Were they actually mystical magicians? Or were they something arguably way more impressive? Deeply pragmatic engineers.
You know, this core conflict is captured absolutely perfectly by the cover of Corinna Rossi's fascinating study, Architecture and Mathematics in Ancient Egypt. Just look at a pyramid, and immediately, modern scholars want to overlay it with complex, abstract geometrical formulas. We desperately want to project concepts like the golden section or Fibonacci sequences onto these ancient structures. We kind of just assume there must be some lost, mystical wisdom at play. But as we'll see, the truth is grounded in something far more practical.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll be covering the myth of mysticism, preserving bodies for eternity, the golden section illusion, math of the builders, and finally, practical genius unveiled.
Starting us off with part 1, the myth of mysticism.
Now, before we can really appreciate the true brilliance of ancient Egypt, we have to wipe the slate clean. The absolute crucial point here is that we often project complex, esoteric magic onto a culture that was actually built on systematic pragmatism. For the last couple of centuries, especially since the Renaissance and really picking up steam in the 19th century, European scholars looked at Egypt's immense wealth, scale, and those obscure hieroglyphs and basically just decided, oh, this must be the home of lost magical wisdom. But instead of relying on abstract magic or hidden divine formulas, the ancient Egyptians were highly methodical practitioners. They utilized precise, step-by-step systems to reach very tangible goals.
Which brings us to part 2, preserving bodies for eternity.
To really wrap your head around this practical mindset, just look at the sheer physical reality of mummification. The Egyptians believed the soul, or the Ka, needed a recognizable physical form to repossess after death. And to achieve this, they didn't just wave a magic wand. No, they used real, tangible tools. Specifically, they used natron, which is a naturally occurring salt. The chief embalmer, who would famously wear that awesome jackal-headed mask of the god Anubis, relied heavily on gritty biological agents like this salt, rather than just magical incantations, to painstakingly dry out and preserve the human body over a massive 70-day period.
This builds into an incredible, highly systematic procedure. Just run through this 10-point mummification checklist with me. First, they'd insert a hook through the nose to pull out part of the brain. Next, make a cut in the abdomen to remove the internal organs, and let those dry. Crucial organs like the lungs and liver went straight into canopic jars, but the heart, which they considered the center of intelligence, actually went back inside the body. Then they rinsed the whole cavity with wine and spices, buried the corpse in that natron salt for 70 days, stuffed it with linen or sand so it kept its human shape, wrapped it head to toe in bandages, and finally placed it in a sarcophagus. Notice the chronological, highly procedural nature of this entire thing? It's not a magic trick. It's a rigorous biological process designed to prepare a recognizable body for the soul's return.
So when we compare our modern perception to the actual Egyptian reality, a stark contrast emerges. We look for esoteric magic and hidden math, but their reality was systematic embalming and pragmatic engineering. And this incredible, hands-on methodology didn't just apply to the micro level of human biology, it scaled all the way up to their massive monuments. Let's pivot from mummification to architecture.
Part 3. The Golden Section Illusion.
Moving up to the macro level of massive architecture, for decades, scholars desperately tried to find complex ratios in Egyptian structures. They would take these small-scale plans, grab their rulers and compasses, and frankly apply their own imagination to discover the golden section, pi, and Fibonacci sequences supposedly hidden in the architecture. They were searching for these abstract universal rules that would magically link Egyptian architecture to Greek architecture and beyond. But in doing so, they largely ignored the actual archaeological evidence and what the ancient texts explicitly told us about how these people worked.
When we compare modern architectural theories with the actual ancient evidence, the historical anachronisms become super obvious. I mean, modern theories assume the Egyptians used base 10 decimals, irrational numbers, and the Fibonacci series to calculate the golden section, or phi, which is roughly 1.618. But when we actually look at surviving ancient mathematical texts, like the Rin Mathematical Papyrus, we find a completely different reality. The ancient Egyptians used integers and unit fractions like 1/2 or 1/15. They didn't even have the Fibonacci series. Instead, they did math by continuously doubling and halving numbers. So the complex math modern scholars looked for quite literally didn't even exist in the Egyptian mathematical language. Crazy, right?
Which leads us to part 4, Math of the Builders.
Okay, so if they weren't using the golden section and irrational numbers, how on earth did they build the pyramids? Well, the crucial point is that they didn't rely on abstract floating geometry. They grounded their massive monuments in physical, bodily measuring tools. The standard unit was the royal cubit. This actually corresponded to the length of a forearm and was physically divided into 7 palms or 28 fingers. Dieter Arnold and other leading archaeologists have shown that ancient Egyptian architects laid out their massive plans on the basis of these simple, whole numbers of cubits, palms, and fingers.
And their calculations were just as grounded. To solve massive construction problems, they used a beautifully straightforward arithmetic system. They started with unit fractions, where the numerator is always 1. If they needed to multiply, they didn't use complex times tables. Nope, they just continuously doubled the initial number. And if they needed to divide, they continuously halved it. By using this elegant, simple progression, scribes and builders could calculate the area of a field, the volume of a granary, or even the slope of a giant pyramid, all without ever needing to discover irrational numbers or secret golden ratios.
Finally, part 5, Practical Genius Unveiled.
Tying these micro and macro themes together, a really beautiful, coherent picture emerges. From the gritty natron salt used by the embalmer to preserve human flesh, all the way up to the simple measuring cord and unit fractions used by the architect to raise a pyramid, their legacy is not one of secret magic. Their legacy is one of supreme, hands-on, pragmatic engineering. And honestly, achieving eternity using nothing but simple, practical tools and rigorous methodology, that is far more impressive to me than any fictional magical code ever could be.
I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder today. Does our modern obsession with finding complex, secret codes actually blind us to the true brilliance of simple, practical engineering? The next time you look at a towering pyramid or an ancient artifact, try not to look for the magic, look for the method, because the method is where the true genius lies. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it completely shifts